Guys, we need to talk about the real chip war and how much it's hitting our wallets. You know that semiconductor shortage? Well, it's shaping whether the technology we want so badly will become insanely more expensive, or, who knows, even cheaper. This has a huge impact on where we invest in tech, you know? Your next phone might cost twice what you paid for your last one, or it might cost half. And the weird part is, nobody actually knows which way it's going to go. Not the tech companies, not the government stockpiling billions in semiconductor factories, not even the guys running the machines that make the chips. We're standing at this bizarre crossroads where technology could either become the most expensive luxury you've ever bought or cheaper than it's ever been in human history. And what terrifies me is that most people have no idea this war is even happening. Right now, as you're watching this, there are ships changing routes in the Pacific, factories being built in deserts, and trade negotiations happening behind closed doors that will determine whether you'll be able to afford the technology you need 5 years from now. This isn't some distant economic theory. This is about whether your kid gets a laptop for school, whether your small business can upgrade its systems, whether the car you're saving for will even exist at a price you can pay. The semiconductor war isn't coming. It already started. And your wallet is the battlefield. Let me paint you a picture of how insane this situation really is. There's a factory in Taiwan, just one factory, that makes about 90% of the world's most advanced chips. Not 90% of Taiwan's chips. 90% of the entire planet's supply. The chips in your phone, your computer, your car, the servers running the app you're using right now, they probably all came from this one place. It's called TSMC, and if it stopped working tomorrow, the global economy would collapse within weeks. Not struggle. Collapse. We're talking about a single point of failure for modern civilization, and it sits on an island that China claims as its own territory and has repeatedly threatened to take by force. When I first learned this, I thought it had to be exaggerated. There's no way we'd build our entire technological future on something that fragile, right? But then I started digging into the numbers, talking to people in the industry, looking at what governments are actually doing, not what they're saying. And I realized the situation is actually worse than it sounds. Here's where it gets personal, and this is where I need you to do something for me. If this is already making you uncomfortable, if you're starting to realize how much of your daily life depends on something you never thought about, hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because this story gets darker before it gets better, and you're going to want to know how this ends. I'm not asking because I need the algorithm boost. I'm asking because the number of people who understand this crisis is pathetically small. And every subscription means one more person who won't be blindsided when the prices start changing or when the shortages hit. Your click might seem meaningless, but information is the only weapon most of us have in this fight. Now back to why you should be worried. The chip shortage that made cars impossible to buy in 2021, that wasn't even a real shortage. That was a hiccup, a supply chain stumble. What's coming could be an actual drought, and unlike that temporary shortage, this one has nothing to do with COVID or shipping containers or any of that surface-level stuff. This is about power, real geopolitical power. See, semiconductors aren't just products, they're the foundation of military capability, economic dominance, and technological sovereignty. Whoever controls chip production controls the future, and right now that control is concentrated in a way that makes oil look diversified. China knows this. The United States knows this. Europe knows this. And they're all scrambling, throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at the problem, trying to build their own semiconductor independence. The U.S. CHIPS Act alone committed over $50 billion to bring chip manufacturing back to American soil. The European Chips Act matched it. China's been pouring money into semiconductors for years, treating it as a matter of national survival. And this is where your wallet enters the equation, because every single one of those billions has to come from somewhere and go somewhere. And the ripple effects are going to hit your bank account whether you're paying attention or not. Let me explain how money works in this industry because it's genuinely insane. Building a single advanced chip fabrication plant, what they call a fab, costs somewhere between 10 billion and 20 billion, not million, billion, with a B, and that's just to build it. Running it requires thousands of highly specialized engineers, constant upgrades, and materials so pure that a single speck of dust can destroy millions of dollars worth of product. The machines inside these fabs are themselves technological miracles. There's one company in the Netherlands, ASML, that makes the extreme ultraviolet lithography machines needed for cutting-edge chips. Each machine costs about $150 million, weighs 180 tons, and there are only a few dozen of them in the entire world. You can't just decide to make advanced chips. You need to invest billions, wait years, attract talent that barely exists, and hope you don't fall behind while you're building because this technology advances so fast that your billion-dollar factory might be obsolete before it produces its first chip. So here's the question nobody wants to ask out loud. If it costs that much to make these things, and if everyone's building their own factories instead of sharing resources, and if the geopolitical tensions keep rising, how exactly are chips supposed to get cheaper? The honest answer is, they probably won't, not the advanced ones anyway. We've been living in this golden age where technology got better and cheaper every single year, where Moore's law felt like a guarantee, where you could wait 6 months and get twice the performance for half the price. That era is ending, and most people haven't realized it yet. The economics don't work anymore. When TSMC was serving the whole world from Taiwan, they had incredible economies of scale. When the US builds its own fabs, and Europe builds its own, and China builds its own, all of them serving smaller markets with higher costs and less expertise, those economies of scale evaporate. And who pays for that? You do. Through higher prices on every piece of technology you buy. But wait, because this is where it gets complicated, and where that opening statement starts to make sense. There's a completely different scenario, equally plausible, where technology gets radically cheaper. Stay with me here. What if all this government investment actually works? What if the US and Europe successfully build competitive chip industries, breaking Taiwan's monopoly? What if China's massive investments pay off and they start producing advanced chips domestically? Suddenly, instead of one supplier controlling the market, you'd have real competition. And competition, historically, drives prices down. Plus, there's another factor everyone's ignoring. Older chip technology, the stuff that's not cutting edge, is getting cheaper to produce all the time. And here's the thing most people don't understand. You don't actually need a 3-nanometer chip to do most tasks. Your coffee maker doesn't need it. Your car's entertainment system doesn't need it. Even most laptops don't really need it. The bleeding-edge chips go into flagship phones, high-end gaming systems, AI data centers, that kind of thing. Everything else can run on older, cheaper technology. This creates a split market, and this is crucial to understanding where prices are heading. The absolute top-tier technology, the newest iPhones, the most powerful gaming computers, the AI systems, that stuff is probably going to get more expensive. Maybe a lot more expensive. But the mid-range, the everyday technology most people actually use, that could drop in price significantly as older chip technology becomes commoditized and competition increases. We might be heading toward a future where technology bifurcates into luxury products for the wealthy and good enough products for everyone else. Which honestly sounds dystopian when you say it out loud, but it might also be realistic. Think about cars. You can buy a used Honda that gets you to work just fine, or you can buy a Ferrari. Both exist in the same market at wildly different price points. Technology might start working the same way. The question is, which side of that divide do you want to be on? And more importantly, which side will you be able to afford? Here's what keeps me up at night about this whole situation. The chip war isn't really about chips, it's about control. It's about one country not wanting to be dependent on another for the building blocks of modern life. And that's reasonable, honestly. You can't run a military on chips made by a potential adversary. You can't build a secure communications network on hardware you don't control. National security demands semiconductor independence. But the cost of that security is enormous, and it's being paid in economic efficiency. We're choosing security over cheapness, sovereignty over optimization. And again, that might be the right choice strategically, but it means accepting that technology will cost more because we're no longer optimizing for cost. We're optimizing for control. Every government spending billions on domestic chip production is essentially saying we're willing to pay more to make sure we're not dependent on anyone else, which is fine for governments with trillion-dollar budgets, but you're not a government. You're a person trying to buy a laptop or a car or a phone, and you're going to be the one paying the premium for other people's security. Let's talk about what this looks like in practice, because abstract economics is boring and your actual life isn't. You're planning to buy a new car in 2 years. Right now, a decent new car has somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 chips in it. Everything from the engine control unit to the touchscreen to the safety systems runs on semiconductors. If chip prices go up 30%, that's not adding 30% to your car's price, but it's adding something. Maybe $2,000, maybe $5,000, depending on the car. Or maybe the car companies can't get enough chips at any price, so they build fewer cars, so the prices go up because of scarcity, and now you're paying $10,000 more for the same vehicle. This already happened in 2021 and 2022. Used car prices went insane because new cars weren't available. People were paying above sticker price, waiting months for delivery, and the whole thing felt surreal. And that was just a preview. A stress test. The real shortage, if it comes, will be longer and harder, because it won't be about shipping delays or COVID shutdowns. It'll be about fundamental supply and demand in a fractured global market. Or here's another scenario. You run a small business and you need to upgrade your computers. Right now, you can get a decent business laptop for $800. In 3 years, maybe that same laptop costs $200 because the chips inside got more expensive to produce. That's an extra $400 per employee, and if you've got 10 employees, that's $4,000. Not a catastrophic amount, but it adds up. And it's not just computers. Your point of sale system, your security cameras, your network equipment, all of it depends on chips. If those prices all rise together, your technology budget could easily double. Small margins get erased. You either eat the cost and make less profit, raise prices and lose customers, or delay upgrades and fall behind competitors who can afford to invest. None of those options are good. This is how the chip war trickles down from geopolitics to your actual balance sheet. It's not dramatic. There's no single moment where everything breaks. It's just a slow squeeze where everything costs a little more and margins get a little tighter until suddenly you're struggling and you're not even sure why. Now let me flip the script again, because I don't want to just be doom and gloom here. There's a legitimate case that we're worrying about nothing. The tech industry has a remarkable history of solving impossible problems. When people said Moore's law was dead 15 years ago, engineers found new ways to keep shrinking transistors. When people said we'd hit physical limits, they invented new materials and new manufacturing techniques. Betting against human ingenuity and technology has historically been a losing bet. Plus, the massive investments happening right now might actually pay off faster than anyone expects. The US is building fabs in Arizona, Texas, Ohio. Europe's building them in Germany and France. If even half of these projects succeed, global chip production capacity could double in the next decade. More capacity means more supply. More supply means lower prices. Maybe. The wild card is whether demand grows faster than supply. AI is eating chips at an absurd rate. Data centers are expanding like crazy. Electric vehicles need more chips than traditional cars. The Internet of Things is putting chips in everything from refrigerators to toothbrushes. So we're in this race between supply trying to catch up and demand running away, and nobody knows who wins. What we do know is that the next 5 years are going to be volatile. Prices will swing. Availability will fluctuate. Some products will get cheaper while others get more expensive, and predicting which is nearly impossible. Because it depends on factors ranging from trade policy to factory yields to whether a particular company's bet on a new chip architecture pays off. This uncertainty is actually the scariest part. If I could tell you with confidence that technology will be 30% more expensive in 2028, you could plan for that. You could save accordingly, budget differently, make informed decisions. But I can't tell you that, and neither can anyone else, because we're in uncharted territory. The global semiconductor supply chain that we built over the past 40 years is being deliberately dismantled and rebuilt along national lines, and nobody's done that before. We're running an experiment on the world economy in real time, and you're part of the test group whether you volunteered or not. Here's something most people don't think about. The chip war affects poor countries way more than rich ones. If you're in the US or Europe and chip prices double, that sucks, but you'll probably still be able to buy technology. It might mean keeping your phone an extra year, or buying a cheaper model, but you'll manage. If you're in Nigeria or Bangladesh or Bolivia and chip prices double, Technology might just become unaffordable. Period. The digital divide, which was already enormous, could become unbridgeable. We talk a lot about technology democratizing access to information and opportunity, and that's been true for the past 20 years. Smartphones got cheap enough that billions of people in developing countries could get online, start businesses, access education, connect with the world. If that reverses, if technology becomes a luxury good again, we're not just talking about economics. We're talking about locking entire populations out of the modern economy. And that has consequences way beyond anyone's individual wallet. Political instability, migration pressures, widening inequality between nations. The chip war isn't just about whether you pay more for a laptop, it's about the shape of global society for the next 50 years. Let me bring this back to something concrete you can actually do, because feeling helpless about massive geopolitical trends is paralyzing. First, understand that your purchase decisions matter. When you buy technology, you're voting with your wallet for a particular vision of the future. If you keep buying the newest flagship phone every year, you're telling companies that people will pay premium prices for cutting-edge chips. If you buy mid-range devices that work perfectly fine, you're supporting the market for cheaper, older technology. Second, think about timing. If you know you'll need a new computer or car in the next few years, pay attention to chip market news. There will be windows where supply is good and prices drop. There will be windows where shortages hit and prices spike. Buying at the right time could save you thousands. Third, consider longevity. The best way to insulate yourself from price volatility is to not need to buy things as often. Buy devices you can repair, upgrade, and keep running for years. Fight planned obsolescence. The chip war makes this more important than ever. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say. Your individual choices, my individual choices, they don't actually matter that much in the big picture. This war is being fought by governments and corporations with trillion-dollar budgets. Our consumer preferences are basically rounding errors in their calculations. The real decisions are being made in Washington, Brussels, Beijing, and Taipei, and we're not in those rooms. So what do we do with that? Do we just accept that we're passengers on a ride we didn't choose? Maybe. Or maybe we start paying attention to which politicians actually understand this issue. Which ones are making smart policy choices versus performative ones? Which ones are positioning their countries to win the chip war versus just scoring political points? This stuff matters, and it's going to matter more in the next election cycle than most people realize. Semiconductor policy sounds boring compared to healthcare or immigration or whatever hot-button issue is trending, but it might actually be more important to your financial future than any of those other things. I want to tell you about a conversation I had with a chip engineer last year. This guy has worked in the industry for 20 years, designed processors you've definitely used, and he told me something that stuck with me. He said the chip war is ultimately unwinnable because physics doesn't care about politics. You can't just will advanced semiconductors into existence through government spending. You need expertise that takes decades to develop, equipment that barely exists, an iterative knowledge that comes from making millions of chips and learning from every failure. Taiwan has that. TSMC has that. They've been doing this at the highest level for longer than anyone else. The US can build fabs, but can it build the ecosystem? Can it train enough engineers? Can it develop the institutional knowledge? Maybe, but it'll take time. Probably a decade at minimum, and in that decade, Taiwan keeps advancing. China keeps advancing. The gap you're trying to close is moving. It's like trying to catch up to a car by running, except the car is accelerating. So here's the climax, the moment where all these threads come together. We're heading into a period of radical uncertainty in technology pricing. Not next month, but over the next 5 to 10 years. You could see scenarios where flagship smartphones cost $3,000, while basic ones cost $200. Where new cars are unaffordable for the middle class, but used cars flood the market. Where AI services become incredibly cheap because of competition, but the devices to access them become more expensive. Where technology splits into tiers so distinct that they might as well be different industries. Or you could see the opposite. Massive oversupply as all these new fabs come online, driving prices down across the board. A chip glut instead of a chip shortage. Technology becoming cheaper than ever, just as demand plateaus. Or most likely, you'll see both. Different product categories moving in different directions. Gaming computers getting more expensive while smart home devices get cheaper. Electric vehicles costing more while the software inside them gets better and free. The bifurcation I mentioned earlier, where technology stops being one market and becomes many markets at different price points, serving different customers. What this means for you personally depends entirely on what kind of technology you need and how much flexibility you have. If you need cutting-edge performance for work, if you're a video editor or a software developer or a data scientist, you're probably going to pay more. If you just need functional technology for daily life, you might actually benefit from cheaper alternatives flooding the market. But here's what worries me most. The uncertainty itself is a cost. Not being able to plan, not knowing whether to buy now or wait, not understanding which way prices are trending, that creates stress and bad decisions. People overpay because they panic about shortages. People delay purchases and miss opportunities because they're waiting for prices to drop. The psychological toll of not knowing is real, and it's something we don't talk about enough in economic discussions. We treat people like rational actors making informed choices. But how are you supposed to make informed choices when even experts disagree about what's going to happen? You're stuck making your best guess and hoping it works out. And that's an uncomfortable place to be when you're spending significant money. So here's where we end up. The chip war is real, it's happening now, and it's going to affect your wallet one way or another. Technology might get more expensive, it might get cheaper, it might split into entirely different markets. The honest answer is nobody knows for sure, and anyone who claims certainty is either lying or uninformed. What you can do is stay informed, make thoughtful purchase decisions, and understand that you're living through a major historical shift in how technology is produced and distributed. This matters. Your attention to this issue matters. And that's why I need you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because I'm going to keep covering this story as it develops. Hit the like button so more people see this, because the more people understand what's happening, the better decisions we collectively make. And most importantly, leave a comment telling me what you think. Even if you disagree with everything I've said, especially if you disagree, tell me I'm wrong about where prices are heading. Tell me I'm being too pessimistic or not pessimistic enough. Tell me about how this is affecting your life or your business or your plans. The conversation is what matters. The chip war is being fought over our heads, but that doesn't mean we have to be silent about it. Your voice, your perspective, your experience, that's data that matters. So talk to me. Tell me what you're seeing, and let's figure out together how to navigate whatever comes next.